I would do pull-ups until my arms fell off. I would do sprints until I couldn't run another one, or I would throw up in the corner. And I would read voraciously before I left my house. I came up with this thing in my brain that if I read, like 5 pages in the morning and 5 pages at night, that was 3,650 pages a year. That's 10 books.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just for people that don't have time to read.
I love when coaches, consultants, and professional service providers want to do big things in their business. They want to rise to the top and influence their market and the world around them. They want to have a greater impact and make a more lucrative income. Well, if this is you, welcome to Expert in You podcast, the show where I interview other experts and coaches, consultants, so that they can share their success strategies with you. We're going to talk about marketing and how to close more sales, how to get more premium clients, and how to really build your visibility in the market and scale your business like a boss. If this is you, welcome to the show. I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now so you don't miss one episode. Grab your coffee and buckle up, because we are ready to give it all to you to help you become the expert and get paid as the expert that you are. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Jan Carden, and I'm so excited for my guest today. We have just had the best conversation before we started recording. And Steve Werner, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I'm glad my camera is working this time, because I know last week we had a little malfunction when we first got connected. I am
glad to. Yeah. So I'm excited to have you on, because we're going to talk about grit. We're going to talk about reinventing yourself when things happen that are unexpected. What do you do with that? And Steve has quite a backstory, and I'm just going to let him dive in and start talking, and then we'll dive into the content. So Steve, just give everyone a quick version of kind of how you got to where you are and what you're doing today.
Certainly. So, I always like to say you don't get to see the script. And if I would have seen the script of my life, I probably wouldn't have believed it. I would have said, not this guy. This is not my story. But my professional life is I came out of college in 1982 from Arizona State, and I wound up at the Chicago Board of Trade as a treasury bond trader. Ironically, a month earlier, I didn't even know the place existed. I had no idea what it was about. And one phone call changed my life. My college roommate, best friend, called me up, asked me if I would take a ride with him to this place called the Chicago Board of Trade. And I said, no, I'm actually going to start working for my dad next week in his construction business, and I'm going to play golf right in an hour. And he said, please take the ride with me. I'll get you to the golf course a little later. I don't want to go by myself. And I wound up doing exactly that. I took a ride, wound up at this place called the Chicago Board of Trade, which was really controlled chaos. I don't know if you've seen it, if you've ever seen the old style of commodity trading or floor trading, where 1,000 people jumping up and down and yelling, screaming. And,
in the movies.
I wound up meeting a young guy. Heard me?
I said in the movies.
In the movies, right? Well, that was it. That was real life. I was taken down to the 4th floor, which was the trading floor. The door opened, and it was just yelling and screaming and chaos. And I had no idea what to say, what to do. And there was a young guy that was recruiting guys my age out of college and teaching them the art of trading, and took me back to his office and said, you just think you're going to come down here and make a lot of money, don't you, punk? And I said, no, actually, I'm going to play golf. He's coming down here. And the guy said, no, when I tell you what I do and how I do it, you're going to beg me. And sure enough, 60 days later, I was in the U.S. Treasury bond pit at the Chicago Board of Trade with no formal business training at all. I had a political science degree, but I learned the art of trading and did that for 20 years and pretty much had 20 years of uninterrupted success. I always say, if I go left, I'm selling aluminum siding and roofs. If I go right, I'm in financial Hollywood. And I went right, and that's what it was. And did that for 20 years. And then in the year 2000, 2001, technology took over, and the trading floors gave way to the computers, and 10,000 people were put out of business overnight. So it wasn't that I wanted to reinvent myself at that point. I had no choice. I had a wife and 3 kids, and my career came to an abrupt halt. And the next thing you know, I went into a family business that I had been investing in for years. Everybody thought that I was the lucky guy. And upon arrival, I found out that it was a Ponzi scheme and that my money and my friends' money were at risk. And I had to like push my family out of their own business, spend 3 years making back millions of dollars with my younger brother and a team of very talented young people, and built that into a crazy business only to be a victim of the credit crisis in 2008 and 9. And here I am again.
I
had to
remember
reinvent
that.
myself. Yep. And then I reinvented myself in a startup in yet another space that I would have never thought of. Vacant property security. Myself and 3 other guys built a company, sold it to private equity. But along the whole journey, I had retained a coach for myself. I always needed like a mentor, a coach. I started doing things like Tony Robbins and John Maxwell when other people wouldn't do it or had no desire. And along the way, I always thought, wow, this would be interesting. I love coaching people. I love connecting people in general. And I did suffer in the mid-teens. I wound up spending a very painful year of my life, getting off a lot of antidepressants and other things that I was reliant on after the credit crisis episode. And when I got through that, I said to myself, if I went through this, there has to be 50 million people dealing with mental health or wellness challenges. And I started a platform that really revolved around my journey and how I righted my ship by, like we discussed a few minutes ago, getting up in the middle of the night and training very intensely, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I called it the Hour of Champions, and went out and built a community around it and started coaching and training people on how to bounce back. And most recently, one of my son's friends called it gritty wellness. He said, wow, Mr. Werner, that's gritty wellness. And I've been really toying around with that phrase the last few weeks, even had some t-shirts made up that said gritty wellness. And I think I'm going to be kind of carrying that along with me for the next several years, and teaching people how to use grit and get down the old-fashioned way to solve life and business issues rather than popping a pill or sitting in a bar, whatever it is. And I know that might have been long-winded. I don't know how to say it any shorter, so here I am right now. Yeah.
I love it. No, I love it. And, mental health is such a huge thing right now, really just across the country and really across the world. But I really like that we're talking about this because I do feel like society, not to say that pills and those kinds of things are not helpful, but I do feel like society relies on that and they don't look for more holistic ways to change things. I was in health and fitness for 20 years with I had health clubs and weight loss centers. And so many people would get off of antidepressants, all blood pressure medicine, all these things that just made a difference in their life through exercise and eating right. And I'm just a huge advocate of holistic first. Again, there's a place. Yep. I'm not saying there's not a place for pharmaceuticals and things like that. I'm not bashing them. I just love this. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because I feel like if we can get a message out there that there really are other ways to do things, why not take a stand for your own, be an advocate for your own health and your own mental well-being. And that's really what we're talking about here. But grit is something you have to have in life, in your journey, really whether you're in a job or you're an entrepreneur, or you're a mom or you're a dad or whatever that is. People that have that grit and can push through and get to the other side of things, they are the ones that, have the most success and I feel like are the happiest, have a life that is fulfilling. And that's really what we're talking about here.
Could not agree more. And I don't want to bash the mental health market. I do want to bash the pharmaceutical companies because it's a big business. It's a real big business. And when things start happening, when you get a call from, a friend who says, my granddaughter didn't get into Michigan, so she's on Zoloft. She's not depressed. She's disappointed. And
exactly.
When we start medicating disappointment is when we are really playing with dynamite,
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's not a one-off incident. And you hear about, the phrase ADD. All these kids are on Adderall for ADD. I don't know anybody that doesn't have ADD. I don't know anybody that didn't have ADD, in some
Exactly.
way,
They
shape,
just
or
gave it a
form.
name and now they have a
Yeah,
medicine
they gave
for
it
it.
a
Yeah.
name and a pill to cure it. And, wow, if ADD is a bad thing, I can tell you at 4 a.m. in the morning, I have a book going. I'm on the computer. I'm listening to a podcast and I'm picking out my workout clothes all at the same time,
Yes.
and that's every morning. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. And I think that's the thing. It's just been too easy for things to get labeled and, oh, let's create a pill for that. Let's instead of, it's really interesting, Steve. I work with a lot of doctors. So I get to see a lot into the medical field, things that I never would know unless I was personally working with them as their coach in their business. And it's just mind blowing the stuff that goes on with pharmaceutical companies and in the health and medical field. And it's really sad. That's just the best way to say it. So if we can get a message out there that there is another way. And by the way, I never shared this with you, Steve, but gosh, this would have been almost 30 years ago, maybe 29 years ago, when my first business, my very, very first business, I decided that I was going to sell that. And I didn't know what my next thing was going to be because there were a lot of imports and I saw the market turning. And so I made a decision. I had an international business. I made a decision to sell that and get out, but I didn't know what my next thing was going to be. And I gained a lot of weight. And I had never been overweight in my whole life. But along with that, I also had depression, and not to the degree that I was bedridden or anything like that. But it was the first time in my life I felt genuinely unhappy. Like I just felt depressed and I don't know what my next thing's going to be. And I felt sort of lost. And I started my second business, which was fitness, because I said, well, the only thing I can do is take care of myself. I'm going to get this weight off. I'm going to eat right. And that was how I dealt with it and handled it. And out of that came my second business and on and on. But
what a great story.
The reason I'm telling that is because I was in that place, but taking care of myself, getting the weight off, eating right, fitness, that was what gave me the passion to want to help other people because I knew it changed my life and all things through God in my life. But God gave me the mental, wherewithal to say, okay, you need to do this. You need to take care of this. And so when I did, it took me into my next business. And so my passion was when people would come in and they had depression or they had anxiety or they had whatever, I was super passionate about getting them onto a different road. So I totally resonate with everything you're saying. And I watched it. I helped thousands of people through the years. I coached them in my fitness, in my health clubs and in weight loss. And I watched their lives change when they took care of themselves physically, which also affected them mentally.
I love it. I'm very transparent about my story. It's all over. It has been all over the internet. I've done talks on it, but the Cliff Notes version for me is I lost my beautiful business in 2009 and had to spend 2 years painfully unwinding it, owing a Wall Street bank a lot of money, a lot of investors involved. And the truth was, I didn't care about my own personal worth. I cared about everybody else that had trusted me as a business person. And I found out that I'm not more powerful than a 100-year tsunami. But in 2015, I was having breakfast with a friend's son who's a doctor who I had known since he was 12 years old, and now he's 30 something. And he looked in my eyes and he said to me, "What do you want?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Steve, I've known you since I'm a little kid. You have a glazed look in your eyes and there's something wrong." And I said, "Well, I had this incident in 2009. Now it's 6 years later." And he said to me, "Well, tell me what you're on." And I rattled off 4 drugs: Ambien, Klonopin, Doxepin, Lexapro. And he just said to me, "You're going to die." And I said, "What?" "All I did was agree to have breakfast with you, and now I'm going to die." And he said to me, "I'm going to get you off all this stuff. Whoever put you on this should be in jail. And I've got to know right now, are you in or are you out?" And I'm hitting myself going, am I dreaming? Could this be all I did was agree to meet somebody for breakfast and get caught up on life. And now I have one doctor who put me on these drugs, another one who tells me I'm going to die. And I said, "Okay, I'm in. What do I do?" And he said, "Give me Jill, that's my wife. Give me her phone number. I'm going to have to tell her how to dispense this to you to get you off, because if we don't do it correctly, you're going to have a seizure or a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
You're addicted. And I go, I'm addicted? What do you mean?
Wow.
I never abuse the prescriptions.
Mm-hmm.
I take one in the morning and one at night. And he said, I don't know if you've ever tried to get off, but this is going to be the worst year of your life. And he was right. And I pushed in all my chips. I gave him my wife's number, gave my wife all the meds. And I could tell you the second night, I started experiencing massive withdrawals. 2 of my kids were out of the house. I was sleeping in my older son's bedroom. It was 2 a.m. and I was shaking like a leaf, tears pouring down my face. This is night number 2. And I texted him and I said, I need more Klonopin. And you know how you can see the bubble coming back on a text when somebody, and it said, F you, not quite that nice. And I looked, I go, what? I need more Klonopin again, F you. And he said, get in the street and run 25 wind sprints. And I called him and I said, but Ari, it's February 4th, it's 5 below zero. And he said, I know the date, I know the time. I told you I'd be with you every step of the way. Do it. I went out in the street, I ran 25 wind sprints. I came back, I said, I did it. And he said, how do you feel? I go, I feel better. He said, great, get a shower, get your day started. And I said, it's 3:40 in the morning. He said, I know the date, I know the time, let's go. And I described that as the first night of 10 months of living hell. Every single day for 10 months.
Wow.
Something new. And then one day I woke up and I was sitting at my kitchen counter and I had tears coming down my face. And my wife said to me, what's the matter? And I said, I feel good. I don't even remember what feeling good feels like. And it was over. And I called him and he said, congratulations, you made it to the other side. A lot of people don't. And I said, I'm going to live, I'm going to tell this story. And that's when I started sharing it publicly and saying to people, be like me, like, this stuff is not intended forever. And, there's 3 things that I wish people would ask their doctor before they get medicated. And that is, how long do you suspect I'll be on these meds? Mm-hmm. Can I get addicted? And what are the side effects? And if you heard the answers to any of them and you liked them, you'd probably take the meds. But my guess is you'd be frightened at all 3 answers because I didn't know to ask. And that's the only thing I ask people to do now. I don't get combative with the medical community. If you need to be on drugs, just ask the questions because you'd be frightened to hear the answers.
So good. So good.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the grit. You said it was the worst year of your life. Let's talk about that. And what did you go through? What happened? Yes, all of it. Let's unpack it.
Yeah. So, let me clarify. So during that period, I was a husband, a father, a son, a business partner, a little league coach, a brother. I was everything.
So you couldn't just shut down. That was not an option.
On the outside, everything looked normal. On the inside, it was falling apart. I mean, I remember sitting at a wedding with my wife and one of my cousins elbowed her husband and said, why can't you have it all together like Steve does? Look at him. He's successful. He's got a beautiful wife, beautiful kids. He's be like Steve. And I'm going, oh my God, if they only knew. But I never stopped. I started after the first experience. I started going to the gym at 3:00 in the morning. My health club at that time was open 24/7. And Ari, my doctor friend, said to me, you're going to have to find spirituality and incorporate that into your life. And you're going to have to keep exercising your brain by reading voraciously. So I started looking for spirituality. I looked in my closet. I looked under my bed. I looked in my trunk of my car. I didn't know how to find it, and he said to me, use your resources, Google, books, anything you can. And I started YouTubing and I stumbled across lecturers like Eckhart Tolle, Marianne Williamson, Gabrielle Bernstein, and I started programming their YouTubes into my phone. I would go to the gym at 3 a.m. and I would listen while I was working out. And I took grit to the next level. I would do pull-ups until my arms fell off. I would do sprints until I couldn't run another one or I would throw up in the corner. And I would read voraciously before I left my house. I came up with this thing in my brain that if I read, like 5 pages in the morning and 5 pages at night, that was 3,650 pages a year. That's 10 books. And that's just for people that don't have time to read. So I started 2xing that and 3xing it and reading a book every few days and just like take whatever, if I would read 50 pages, I would go, when I got to 50, I'd go do 5 more, do 5 more, do 5 more. Or when I was running sprints, I'd go do 2 more. Or when I was learning how to meditate and I couldn't meditate for a minute, I would say do 15 more seconds, 30 more seconds, another minute. And I just kept pushing through these ceilings, and I was really measuring my time and my success, but I was also creating methods to deflect the depressive thoughts that were going on in my brain. Because when you're deep into grit, you can't think of anything that's bothering you other than getting through the challenge that you put yourself through. And that's the beauty of it.
Right. But not only that, when you get to the other side of that, when you get that breakthrough, and it sounds like you broke through over and over again, anytime you say more, give me more, go beyond what you thought you could do more, that
Yes.
also does things with serotonin, dopamine, all of those things. And so now you get this whole nother reward, so to speak, to push through. And I think a lot of people, to your point, they stop. What do we say in business? Oh, you stop 3 feet before the gold, right? Oh, it's hard. I'm going to stop. And if you're going to break through and get to the other side and really see the rewards and reap the rewards, I always say there's resistance before the reward. You get that resistance, then you get the reward.
Yeah, and I frequently use the phrase, what I resist most is always the key to my freedom.
That's true.
So whenever,
That is true.
whenever I resist, like I really resisted the spiritual thing. I'm like, that's for like foo-foo kind, like not for me. I'm a tough guy. And now I have to tell you, it is the most important part of my existence. It really is. And, I have people say to me, when did you become so religious? And I always say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And when they ask what the difference is, I do say, I'm told that religious people are trying to avoid hell. Spiritual people have already been there. So if you didn't know you were spiritual, congratulations. Good. Yeah. And it proved to be true in my world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So good. So give somebody 3 tips for what they could go do today to start changing their life with what you've experienced.
Yeah. The first thing you have to do unconditionally is get started. You have to do something, right? Like I know that, like even I told you that I think I said I had t-shirts printed up that said gritty wellness, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to do it. So I got started. I called my daughter-in-law. I said, draw me a logo that says gritty wellness. And then I went and took it and I went to a t-shirt place and I had them printed. And now I walk into the gym today and that's really the easy secret, is to get started. Like you hear people say, I'll start working out when I lose weight. Well,
right.
Right. And for me, it's if I have a client and I say, can you do 10 push-ups? Mm-hmm. And they go, no, I can't do 10 push-ups. Can you do 1 push-up? Of course I can. Okay, then do 1 push-up 10 times, right? Like then you have your 10 push-ups.
Yeah.
The second thing is exercise your brain. And I love to ask people, even my age, and I'm gonna be on Medicare next week. What are you studying? And people go, studying? Like I'm not in school anymore. Why would you can't ever stop studying? There's always something to learn, something of interest. And if you can't do it in a book, do it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So every single morning I get up, I find something obscure that I want to learn about. Like maybe like how an engine is affixed to an airplane. But after a flight, I'm looking, going, how is this thing hanging on to this wing at 500 miles an hour? Well, I'm going to find out on YouTube tomorrow because the answer is there. The answer to anything you want. So never stop learning would be 2. Get started, never stop learning, and connect to a source greater than yourself. If that starts out by walking in nature and just visualizing and seeing how, like in Chicago right now, it's springtime, how the leaves suddenly know how to appear on trees right around now, or like, I don't know, I look out my window and there's a cardinal flying around. In my world, there's a message. Somebody, it's there to tell me something, connect to something greater than yourself. And I think if you can start with those 3 things, you can really open up a world that is so gigantic. It's miraculous.
Such good stuff. And I would add to that, when you talk about connect to a source greater than yourself, I would add to that gratitude. if you just look around, there is an abundance of things to be grateful for, and your brain cannot process positive and negative at the same time. And so if you can focus on what you're grateful for, those things also can start changing your mental well-being.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because I am always low on gratitude. I am grateful, but not grateful enough. And it's something that I resist, and I don't remind myself enough. And it's so powerful. It really is. I always ask clients when they tell me something about themselves or a place that they are in their mind. And I always say, is that where you're at, or is that where you tell yourself you're at? And I really have to focus more on gratitude. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's just one of the things that, when I start my day, I look at the things I'm grateful for. And even that cardinal that you talked about, I mean, the beauty of nature, even something as simple as that, or think about a hummingbird or anything. You could take anything in nature, anything, and you could look at that and dissect just the amazement of it and the creation of it, and just being grateful for things like that, and being grateful. You and I were just having a conversation about what is going on with the war and things like that. And we were talking about that. And, I'm grateful that I'm in a country that we're not suffering. We don't have that. But that doesn't mean it's not happening in the world. But so you just have to look at those things. And there's just so much. The fact that we're on here talking, Steve, and connecting halfway across the world, I'm grateful for that. So this is.
I am too. And there's a word in Hebrew or Yiddish, which is a Hebrew slang. It's called beshert, and beshert means meant to be. And to me, this is beshert. This conversation doesn't happen by accident. There's, as goofy as it might sound to a lot of my contemporaries, I believe it was predetermined. This appointment was set a long, long time ago, and it just happened to land on April 23rd, 2024 at 3:30.
I 100% agree. Yes.
Yep.
So great. But we just got started, right? You have to take the steps. You have to do the thing. You have to take the action. So
you have to they say it's the start that stops most people, and there's nobody better at fooling us than us, and fooling ourselves that we're not ready a lot of the times. And I just won't play that game. I just refuse to. When I won't do things that are destructive, but if I believe they are constructive, then I'll go for it.
How long can you work on getting ready to get ready, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You could do it forever.
You could. Yeah. A lot of entrepreneurs do that. I see it a lot with coaches and consultants, especially if they're new stepping into this space. It's like, okay, at what point are you going to go out and start putting this all into action? We can sit here and do this, but we're procrastinating, because at the end of the day, you still need to go have a conversation with someone to get a client, right? And so it definitely is something that people struggle with. But this has been so great, Steve. I know we could talk forever, but how can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me on the internet on my website at Hour of Champions. I have a Facebook community. It's a free community. I encourage everybody and anybody to jump in and interact with people. You never know if there's somebody on the other side of the world that might need to meet you, and that community facilitates that meeting. You could reach me at my email at steve@hourofchampions.com. Thank you for letting me share that. And anybody who's stuck, or who's telling themselves they're stuck or battling, anything in the uncertainty or stress, overwhelm world, I'd love to chat, because I've been there, and there's a big opportunity beyond it.
And I have to tell you, having that conversation with someone who has been there, they understand. And we just know that that's so powerful. And by the way, I just want to throw this in, Steve. I love your Hour of Champions and the Gritty Wellness. And I think that those two things I don't think you have to give up the Hour of Champions. I think you can coordinate it with Gritty Wellness, but I see a whole movement there. That brand, I could see that completely explode and become a whole movement, just like 75 Hard or some of the other things that are out there. And gosh, I just wish you all the best to touch so many lives and help so many people with that whole concept. I think it's amazing. I love it.
Thank you. I believe that also. And ironically, I was dreaming it up in Arizona. My wife and I were on a hike a few weeks ago, and I kept saying to her, gritty wellness, gritty wellness. This is it. It's everybody needs gritty wellness. And I wound up going back to our place. I turned on the TV, and there was an old episode of Shark Tank, and there was a young gal who was up presenting in front of the sharks or asking the sharks for money for an investment in her business. She had mental health challenges, and she started a clothing line called Anxious. And she was doing crazy amounts of, revenue and, and giving people the ability to tell people they're anxious at the same time, and I thank you for saying that. I do believe that the Hour Champions is my journey, and I'm proud of it. And I would love anybody that wants to jump in, and it takes grit to get well and stay well. Yeah. So thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. We'll put all of his links in the show notes. And until next time, everyone, I wish you well. Have an amazing, amazing week. And by the way, make sure that you share this episode, like it. Sharing is caring. And this message needs to get out there. Steve needs to be out there. And I want to help do that. I want to help propel him in this whole movement that I know he is about to explode and embark upon. I want to help him do that. So thank you for being here again, Steve. And everyone, go rock your business. Have an amazing day. God bless you. Bye-bye. If you've enjoyed this show, then I want to invite you to check out a free automated webinar where I show you how you can bring in ultra high fee clients for $25,000 to $125,000 or even more. I show you how you can do this maybe even in the next 7 to 60 days. So if you want to check out that free webinar, just go to expertinyouaccelerator.com and I'll see you on the inside. You have an amazing day, and until next time, God bless you. Go rock your business.